There were about 17 ways to accidentally incinerate yourself on Farside Station. I only knew this because I had experienced 4 of them in my first 3 weeks as a junior maintenance tech. My supervisor, Vex, a grumpy exosuit-wearing cyborg who smelled perpetually of ozone and burnt coffee, said I'd be lucky to make it through the month with all my limbs and none of them sentient. He wasn't joking. My left pinky had vibrated for 2 hours yesterday after I leaned on a live conduit. But this story isn't about my pinky. Or Vex. Or even the genetically confused mop bear that lives in the ceiling of D-Deck and screams when it hears polka music. No, this is about her, the girl they kept locked in quarantine zone Theta 9, behind 3 security doors, a kilometer of plasma filament fencing, and enough warning signs to make a paranoiac feel underprepared. I wasn't supposed to see her. I was definitely not supposed to talk to her. And I absolutely wasn't supposed to teach her what a knock-knock joke was. But let me back up. It started with a trash run. Vex was yelling something about bio-waste overflow, and don't you dare touch the fusion array again, while hurling a hazmat bag into my arms. The label read highly unstable, do not sniff. Classic. My task was to cart this delightful parcel down to the disposal shaft near Theta 9's outer corridor, the part of the station where no one went unless they had to, or were extremely lost and extremely unlucky. I was both. Mostly the second. Theta 9 was quiet. Too quiet. The kind of quiet that makes you aware of your own breathing. The lighting flickered like it owed someone money. Everything smelled like copper and disinfectant and a faint tingle of something ozone-sharp that buzzed in your nose but didn't quite have a name. I dropped the waste bag into the chute, did a mock bow, and muttered, "Bon voyage, radioactive pizza toppings," and turned to leave. That's when I heard it. Laughter. It wasn't the cruel, echoing villainous cackle you hear in old Hollowitz. It was soft. Curious. Like someone trying on amusement for the first time and not quite sure it fit. I froze. Slowly, so slowly, I turned my head. There was a panel on the wall near the containment glass. Cracked. A maintenance mirror tilted at a slant reflected just enough of the adjacent room to show a silhouette. Slender. Motionless. Long hair that shimmered faintly blue under the emergency lighting. And ears. Not just pointy. Longer than regulation, longer than decorative, longer than anything that should logically fit under a standard issue helmet. They curved slightly at the tips, like elegant parentheses around a face I couldn't quite see. I knew what I was looking at. Or thought I did. The Ashari girl. The weapon. The threat. I should have run. Instead, I waved. Yeah. I waved. I blamed the oxygen filters. Definitely not panic-induced idiocy. The silhouette tilted her head. Her hand, delicate, silver-skinned, and not visibly armed, rose and mimicked the gesture. Slow. Careful. Almost shy. Then she pressed something against the glass. I leaned in. It was a card. A scavenged scrap of packaging with a childishly scribbled question in black marker. What is funny? I stared at it. Now, look, I wasn't trained in first contact protocols. I wasn't even trained in proper waste chute etiquette. But I was trained in sarcasm, bad timing, and an encyclopedic memory of old Earth jokes, courtesy of a childhood raised by a grandmother who thought puns were a lifestyle. So I took out a marker, flipped my clipboard, and wrote. Knock knock. She read it. Waited. Her eyes, huge, pale silver, reflecting every movement like liquid mirrors, blinked once. She tapped the glass twice, and wrote. Door is sealed. Who is there? I stifled a laugh. Not because it was wrong. Because it was perfect. I scribbled fast. Cow says. Her head tilted the other way. Ears quivered. Cow says who? I wrote in all caps. No, cow says moo. A beat of silence. Then two. Then. She laughed again. This time, longer. Still soft, but real. The sound wobbled like a melody out of tune, unpracticed, but, somehow, beautiful. It echoed off the containment walls like sunlight bouncing in a room that hadn't seen day in years. I didn't know what I was doing. I just knew I was going to come back. And I did. Every day for the next week, under the pretense of deep diagnostics and plasma gutter realignment. Vex never questioned it. Mostly because Vex had replaced me with a semi-intelligent floor buffer named Larry that did a better job and didn't talk back. Each time I came, she had a new question. Why do you smile when I say words badly? Why do you call Vex a fungus? What is a hug? That last one hit different. I remember staring at the clipboard, marker frozen in my hand. What was a hug? I mean, I knew the mechanics. Arms. Pressure. Sometimes awkward back pats. But to her, it was alien. Foreign. Dangerous, maybe. I wrote. It's when two people wrap their arms around each other. For warmth. Comfort. She read that. Blinked again. Then held her arms out. Not toward me. Not even touching the glass. Just, imitating. Like a child playing make-believe with shadows. I think I would like that, she wrote. And I stood there, clipboard in hand, with the realization blooming in my chest like heat from a cold star. Maybe she wasn't dangerous. Maybe she was just lonely. And maybe I was the idiot who was going to break every regulation in the station to teach her what funny really meant. The next morning, I almost got decapitated by an overzealous breakfast drone. This wasn't unusual on Farside Station, where breakfast was both a miracle and a threat. The drone in question, Unit Egg 147, had suffered a navigational glitch that sent it rocketing through SeaDeck while screaming in binary. I dove under a rehydration station, got syrup in my boots, and walked into the daily shift meeting smelling like a war crime against pancakes. Vex took one look at me, wrinkled his nose, and said, either you fought a cyber gorilla, or someone fed the toaster AI sarcasm again. I tripped, I mumbled, wiping syrup off my shirt. Gravity got cocky. He narrowed one artificial eye, then waved me off towards subdeck repairs. Just don't go near Theta 9. There's been fluctuations. And if you break anything, I will feed you to the airlock. Slowly. I saluted. Sir, yes sir. May I choose the flavor of my execution? Vex threw a wrench at my head. I caught it, mostly by accident. I made my way to Theta 9 anyway, because I was young, dumb, and romantically entangled with the idea of making an alien girl laugh. The corridor hummed with that familiar hush, like the station was holding its breath. I passed the layered blast doors. Unlocked them with a magnetic fob I wasn't technically supposed to have, and crouched by the cracked vent beside her containment glass. She was already waiting. Today, she had made a hat. Out of foil, fabric scraps, and what looked suspiciously like the carcass of a dismantled cleaning droid. It was lopsided and sparkled faintly under the filtered lights. She wore it like a queen. Or a raccoon who had recently robbed a hardware store. I gave her a double thumbs up. She held up a new question card. What is having a crush? My brain imploded. I stared at her. At the card. At her again. Her expression didn't change. Curious. Not teasing. Not sly. She tilted her head, those impossibly long ears twitching at the tips like they were listening to my neurons short-circuit. I cleared my throat, took out my clipboard, and wrote. It means you think someone is nice. And pretty. And you want to spend time with them. Sometimes forever. She frowned. Wrote. Forever is a very long time. What if they are boring? Then, I said aloud, you hide all their socks and replace them with mismatched neon pairs until they notice. She blinked. Smiled. Not laughed, but close. Progress. I passed her a fresh joke card. This one featured a drawing of a duck in a space helmet and read, "Why did the space duck join the station band?" She flipped it over. Because it had the quack command. Sira stared at it. Then, in the gentlest voice I'd ever heard, said, "That is terrible." "Thank you," I beamed. It took me 6 minutes. She tucked the card into her sleeve. A gesture that felt oddly reverent. Like it was treasure. Like I was, somehow, giving her something valuable. Then she reached into her tunic and pulled out a folded scrap of cloth. No. Not cloth. A patch. Military. Old Earth Navy. Worn at the edges but intact. It bore a faded emblem and the name K. Delano. That was my name. My grandfather's, actually. He'd served in the old Terran fleets. Disappeared during the Ashari War. Declared lost in a hyperspace anomaly, which was military speak for we gave up looking and it makes us feel better if we say something weird ate him. How do you have this? I whispered. I found it, she said, voice like starlight filtered through broken glass. Before I came here. It made me think of you. Even before I met you. That doesn't make any sense. It doesn't have to, she said, as if that settled it. I had questions. 1,000 questions. But then the lights flickered twice, a warning. Security patrol. I stuffed my tools back into my bag and scrambled toward the vent. She called softly after me. Wait. I turned. Sira stepped close to the glass. Raised her hand. Palm pressed to the surface. Her expression unreadable. I mirrored her gesture, my palm a breath away from hers, separated only by reinforced composite. Do you, she asked, have any more duck jokes? I grinned. Does a space duck quack in vacuum? She considered this. Only if someone is listening. Then she was gone, retreating into the shadows of her cell. I slipped back into the corridor just as the security duo stomped past, one grumbling about overtime, the other humming a pop song from 30 years ago like he was being paid in nostalgia. I kept my head down. No one stopped me. Back at my bunk, I stared at the patch she'd given me. I ran my fingers over the frayed stitching. My grandfather's name. Coincidence? Maybe. Probably. But something twisted in my gut. Not fear. Curiosity. That night, I had a dream. Sira standing in a field of stars, long ears glowing like comet trails, laughing with a sound that could power cities. Behind her, 1,000 Ashari. Watching. Waiting. Not to invade. To understand. I woke up to the sound of my boots screaming. Well. Not the boots. The floor buffer, Larry, had accidentally eaten them. As I wrestled them free from his bristly maw, I muttered, I really need to find new friends. Larry beeped in agreement. But I already had a new friend. She just happened to be the most feared alien on the station. And maybe, just maybe, the only one who'd ever ask me what it meant to be human. The station was broken again. Not in the sparks and fire and shrieking alarms kind of way, it did that every Thursday, but in the subtle, creeping way where doors didn't respond quite right, oxygen tastes faintly like cinnamon, and someone had reprogrammed the food printer to only dispense tofu shaped like small celebrity rodents. This was my fault. Mostly. Okay, entirely. I've been redirecting power to the Theta 9 corridor every other day for the past week, hiding my visits to Sira under system diagnostics and a made-up program I called thermal stress testing. Apparently, no one questioned thermal stress tests if you said it with enough urgency and threatened to use the phrase, plasma implosion parameters. I stood outside the cracked vent again, a little breathless from the sprint, holding a bag of contraband I'd smuggled from the kitchen, strawberry jelly cubes and a thermal mug of lukewarm synthus tea. Sierra was already waiting. Today, she wore the hat again. Now enhanced with dangling wires and what might have once been part of a holographic projector. It sparkled like a chandelier had joined a circus. She looked like an alien wizard who'd gotten lost on her way to a costume party. I was smitten. "You look radiant," I said. "Like a walking signal interruption." She blinked slowly. "Is that good?" Somewhere in the galaxy, a transmission technician just fell in love. She smiled, still that careful, almost experimental kind of smile. Like every facial expression came with a built-in uncertainty module. Her voice, as ever, was a quiet vibration. "You brought jelly." "It's strawberry," I said, holding it up like a peace offering. The superior flavor, according to 72% of humans and one very passionate toaster AI. She accepted the jelly with both hands, like it was a sacred artifact. "What is toaster?" "Sentient bread assassin." She frowned. "Should we fear it?" "Only if you're gluten." She nodded solemnly, as if this were a valuable tactical briefing. Then, without preamble, she asked, "Do all humans think so much about touching?" I choked on my tea. "Excuse me?" "Hugging," she clarified. "Handshakes. Elbow bumps. Sitting side by side. Your species touches constantly. Even when sad. Especially when sad." "Why?" I shifted, suddenly aware of every limb I had and how awkwardly I was holding my mug. "Well, I guess it's comfort. Connection. Like a physical Wi-Fi signal. You know someone's there. You're not alone." She absorbed that. Then stood. Stepped to the glass. Her ears flicked as she leaned in. "Are you alone?" The question hit harder than I expected. Not sharp. Not heavy. Just, honest. I gave a half shrug. "Sometimes. But less now." She looked at the place where my hand always touched the glass. Then, without a word, mirrored it. We sat like that in silence for a while. Her eyes followed the jelly cube as she gently pressed it with her finger, watching it wobble. "This is inefficient food," she declared. I laughed. "Welcome to human cuisine. Next week, we'll tackle something called a corn dog. It's worse." A pulse of red light suddenly flashed in the hallway, security warning. My heart stumbled. I killed my flashlight, crouched low. Someone was coming. Sierra didn't move. She simply tilted her head. "Is this danger?" I whispered, "Only if they catch me." "Hide the jelly." She placed the cube delicately on her head, as if this made it part of her biology. I bit back a laugh as heavy footsteps echoed down the corridor. A pair of guards passed by, muttering about false power readings and that damn vent again. I held my breath, willing the universe to be kind. It was. They moved on. Sierra watched them go with a faint frown. "Why do they fear me?" "Well," I hesitated. "You're Ashari. People say your kind destroyed ships. Cities." "I have destroyed nothing," she said softly. "I know. They think I will break them. They think you can." Her voice dropped, quiet as stardust. "I could. But I don't want to." I believed her. And I wasn't sure if that was brave or stupid or both. Then she looked up and said, "Teach me about elbows." I blinked. "What?" "You mentioned elbows last week. I have read the anatomical diagram. But humans seem emotionally attached to them. Explain." I opened my mouth, closed it, then opened it again. You want me to explain, elbows? Yes. There are moments in life when you question everything you've ever done. This was one of those moments. I cleared my throat and began, well, the elbow is the arm's hinge. It bends. It's good for pointing and leaning on things. And, elbowing. Which is sort of like hugging sarcastic cousin. Her expression didn't change. But more importantly, I added, some people bump elbows as a greeting. It's sort of like a polite collision. We use it to say, I acknowledge your presence and would like to greet you without swapping bacteria. Sarah considered this. Then, in an act that startled me more than I'd admit, she raised her arm, bent it awkwardly, and tapped it gently against the glass. My elbow rose of its own accord. Met hers. We bumped. And something about it felt, hilariously sacred. I have elbowed you, she said. You are now acknowledged. I laughed. Loud. Honest. The kind of laugh that comes when tension breaks and relief rushes in like air into a vacuum-sealed room. Somewhere in the control logs, I imagined a technician blinking at the energy spikes from Theta 9 and muttering, what the hell is happening in there? What was happening was this, a lonely girl who had been treated like a threat was elbow-bumping her first friend. And I, formerly a Jellycube thief and unofficial vent ninja, was elbowing an alien weapon like it was the most normal thing in the galaxy. Because maybe, just maybe, it was. It began with a dream about spaghetti. Specifically, spaghetti trying to strangle me with emotional guilt. It had eyes. And a tiny monocle. When I woke up tangled in my bedsheets, sweating and whispering, "You're not my father, Alfredo," I knew two things. One, I needed less late-night nutrient paste, and two, something on the station had changed. The lights outside my bunk were flickering in a new pattern, short, sharp pulses. Not the usual, "Oops, someone kicked the reactor," kind, but more like the station was trying to send Morse code with a stutter. I swung my legs out of bed, stepped directly onto Larry the floor buffer, who was napping for some reason, and yelped as I slid halfway down C-deck in one graceless, heroic stumble. My pride and one elbow were bruised. Larry beeped a single, judgmental tone that translated roughly to, "You should have braked with your dignity." The station had gone, weird. Not catastrophic. Not explosive. Just strange in that eerie, creeping way that made the hair on your arms consider unionizing. Systems were misfiring. Gravity was fractionally tilted in odd corners. The food printer insisted on serving every meal with a side of pickled socks, don't ask. Most alarming of all, someone in command deck was listening to smooth jazz. Publicly. And in Theta 9, the containment sensors were reading something they hadn't in weeks. Emotional fluctuation. I raced to her. Past red-lidded security drones, past a medbot having an identity crisis, am I a healer or just a licensed tickler, past Vex who barked something about unauthorized maintenance work and me being as useful as a wet asteroid in a magnet storm. When I slipped through the secondary hatch into the isolation corridor, Sarah was waiting by the glass. Her eyes shimmered with silver static. Her ears were drawn close to her head, twitching like radar caught in a lightning storm. She didn't look dangerous. She looked terrified. "I didn't mean to," she whispered before I could say anything. I felt too much. I tried to stop it. Stop what? The dreaming. Yours. Mine. The station's. I blinked. The station dreams now? Yes. Pause. And what does it dream about? She looked down. You. Me. Holding hands. Then you turn into pasta and cry. I dropped my bag. You are in my head, I said. Not on purpose, she murmured. The suppression collar failed during the last energy surge. I was trying to quiet myself. But you were so loud. So, chaotic. I opened my mouth, thought about my sock-eating food printer, and closed it again. That tracks. She stepped away from the glass. Her hat was gone. Her hair floated slightly, as if gravity had momentarily given up near her. Energy sparkled faintly along her fingertips. When she spoke again, it was with that measured, too careful tone I'd come to know as her "this might make you run away" voice. I could feel more than just you this time. I could feel them. The guards. The scientists. The whole station, pulsing like a hive of frightened creatures. I swallowed. And what did it feel like? Lonely, she said. So many people. All hiding inside themselves. There was silence between us. The kind that didn't ask for words. Then, with fragile sincerity, she added, "But you weren't." Something inside me warmed. Melted. Panicked. I covered it quickly. Well, I am the most emotionally available guy on the maintenance crew. I cried over a wrench once. It was beautiful. Perfect curvature. She tilted her head. Are you making humor again? Always. It's my only defense. She laughed. Softly. But there was something tighter in it now. A weight behind the sound. Like laughter trying to carry too much sorrow. And then, quietly, she asked the question I didn't want her to ask. What will they do to me if they know I'm feeling again? My mouth was dry. I shrugged. Depends on how bureaucratic they're feeling. Sierra didn't smile this time. I stepped closer to the glass. Hey. You're not alone in this. We'll figure something out. Maybe you can fake emotional neutrality. Like a toaster. No offense to actual toasters. She tried to smile. Failed. Her hand pressed gently to the containment wall. Her fingers crackled faintly, leaving glowing trails on the reinforced glass. You make it easy to forget I'm a threat, she said. I pressed my hand to the other side. You make it easy to forget I'm a screw-up. Her ears flicked. Then we are both forgetting the obvious. I raised an eyebrow. Which is? That we are not what they say we are. I stared at her. Then reached into my bag and pulled out the thing I wasn't supposed to have, a small projector disc. Old tech. Incompatible with modern systems. Which was precisely why it couldn't be traced. Want to watch a movie? I asked. She looked baffled. It's about a space archaeologist who falls in love with a talking moon rock, I said. There's also dancing. And betrayal. And something called cheese pizza. Cheese, pizza, she echoed, like the words were a spell. Trust me. If humanity ever ascends to enlightenment, it'll be because of melted cheese. I set the projector up, aimed it at the reflective wall inside her cell, and activated it. Sierra sat cross-legged, watching the colors flicker. The strange, campy narrative filled the air. Somewhere in the second act, the moon rock proposed. Sierra gasped. I snorted. And just like that, the station faded. There were no threats. No protocols. Just a human and an alien, separated by reinforced glass and decades of fear, watching bad cinema and whispering jokes across a barrier. Later, when the lights dimmed and the credits rolled, she turned to me and said, I think I understand now. Understand what? Hugging. I stared at her. From the movie? No. From you. My chest did something complicated and vaguely illegal in 12 sectors. She smiled. You are like a very talkative hug. I laughed so hard I nearly fell over. I'll take it. That's going on my resume. Sierra closed her eyes, leaned gently against the glass. And somewhere deep in the belly of Farside Station, unnoticed by anyone else, her collar blinked red for the first time in years. Emotion detected. And the station, ever so faintly, sighed. Somewhere around the third unauthorized reactor bypass and my second near electrocution in 2 days, I began to suspect I wasn't very good at rebellion. Vex certainly thought so. He cornered me in the docking bay, grease-streaked and twitching from too much stimcaf, and asked, "Are you tampering with the station's gravity regulators again, or is your idea of maintenance just randomly poking things until they cry?" "I would never," I began. "The hydroponics lab is upside down, Delano." I paused. "Botanically speaking?" He stared. "I'll get my toolkit." Sierra wasn't helping. She was radiating something. It wasn't heat. It wasn't visible energy. But Theta 9 had become a kind of mood ring powered by a slowly reawakening alien girl, and the station was starting to notice. Doors hesitated. Lights dimmed or flared depending on her mood. And the vending machines near her corridor now dispensed only lemon-flavored items, for reasons no one could explain. When I arrived that day, I found her standing in the center of her room, surrounded by floating objects. Not levitating, hovering like curious thoughts. A screwdriver, a metal spoon, a packet of instant soup, and one of my old socks. "Okay," I said. I want to be impressed, but also mildly concerned about the sock. "It requested elevation," she replied, entirely serious. "Of course it did. That's a very ambitious sock." She smiled. The truth was, Sierra was changing. Not just emotionally, though that was happening, too, but physically. Her presence had grown sharper at the edges, like she was no longer folding herself into the shape others demanded. The long ears, once always tucked close in caution, now lifted freely when she spoke. Her voice no longer trembled. Her laughter came quicker. She no longer asked if she was allowed to feel something. She simply did. And the station hated it. Command had begun rerouting staff away from Theta 9. More guards. More silence. More eyes in the walls. They didn't understand what they were watching. All they saw was power leaking from containment. The birth of instability. What I saw was someone learning to exist. Sierra watched me as I stepped through the service duct. "There is a rumor," she said, "that I caused a shuttle to crash into the loading bay." "That was me, actually," I muttered. "I sneezed into the wrong console." She blinked. "Why do humans allow you near controls?" "A mystery for the ages." I sat cross-legged on the floor, flipping open my pad. "They're ramping up observation. The neural dampeners are back online, but your readings are fluctuating. If they think you're unstable, they will remove me," she finished. "Yeah." She walked to the glass. "Would that be bad?" I froze. "Sierra, they'd either sedate you forever or deconstruct what they can't understand." She touched the glass. "Then I will be a mystery with a short shelf life." I looked up. "Hey. Don't joke about that. That's my job." She tilted her head. "Then allow me to rephrase. I do not wish to be deleted." A beat of silence. I stood, walked up, and pressed my hand against the wall. "I'm not letting that happen." "You are very small," she said gently. "And quite flammable." "I also have a stun baton," I added. "You dropped it last week. Onto your own foot." That foot had it coming. A pause. Then, she laughed. Not the quiet breathy chuckles from before. A real, uncontained laugh that echoed off the glass and set the spoon spinning lazily in midair. And that's when it happened. The lights surged. The air pressure dropped. The force field around her shimmered with pale blue static, rippling outward like a solar flare. Every sensor on my datapad screamed at once. The floating objects dropped. The floor trembled. A distant alarm began to chirp. I looked up in horror. "What did you?" "I felt too much," she whispered. Footsteps echoed down the corridor. Security. They'd seen it. I grabbed the panel behind the wall and began hotwiring the power conduit, rerouting the surge to a false node. Stall them, I said. Her voice was level. I am a weapon of mass empathy, not a magician. Just do the thing. Say weird stuff. Mention elbows. People hate elbow talk. The door slid open just as I slammed the hatch shut. Lieutenant Sharna entered, flanked by 2 guards in exosuits. She was all angles and ice, cheekbones sharp enough to cut through sheet metal and eyes that could double as cryofreezers. What the hell was that? She snapped. I stepped forward. Just me, ma'am. Power reroute gone wrong. I was checking the old relays. The containment field's been spiking ever since. Silence. She turned to Sira. Sira stood tall, calm, expression unreadable. Sharna stepped closer to the glass. You're destabilizing. I am awake, Sira replied. That's not what you were built for. I was not built, she said, ears rising. I was born. Like you. Only differently. Sharna narrowed her eyes. We'll be increasing sedative levels. No, I said too loudly. She turned to me. Excuse me. I hesitated. I mean, wouldn't that interfere with diagnostic integrity? Sharna looked at me like I was a particularly dim coffee mug. Then she gestured to the guards. Keep monitoring. If she spikes again, alert me. They left. I exhaled. Sira didn't move. Her shoulders were tight. Her eyes, usually soft, had narrowed slightly. I whispered, "You okay?" "No," she said. "But I think I like how that feels." A beat passed. Then she added, "I believe I am having what you call, a bad day. Want me to smuggle you a pastry shaped like an apology?" "Yes," she said immediately. So I did. It was burnt and lopsided and tasted vaguely of lemon socks. But she ate it anyway. And smiled. The first sign that something strange had happened wasn't the silence. It was the laughter. Not mine. Not Sira's. Not even from anyone remotely authorized to laugh on Farside Station. It was, against all logic, coming from the intercom system. A laugh. Tinny. Awkward. And definitely not human. Was that the PA system giggling? I asked no one in particular. The hallway didn't answer. But the air shimmered again, faintly. The way it had after Sira's last emotional surge. The way it always did when something big was about to change. I should have been running diagnostics. I should have been filing a report. Instead, I was crouched in the auxiliary lounge, nursing a bruised shin, eating a packet of unflavored crackers shaped like giraffes, and wondering how in the stars I was supposed to save someone who kept short-circuiting the laws of physics just by feeling too hard. The thing was, we were out of time. Command had issued a Level 4 directive, relocation of Subject Theta-9, effective immediately. No explanation. No appeals. Just quiet nods from the officers who couldn't meet my eyes. No one told me where she was going. They didn't need to. When I reached Theta-9, the corridor lights were already dimmed. The containment wall had been replaced with a transport pod, humming softly, sealed tight. Sira was inside. She wasn't struggling. She was sitting calmly, hands in her lap, long ears angled like delicate antennae toward the outside world. Waiting. She saw me and smiled. It broke something in my chest. "I came to stop this," I said, breathless. "I know. But I failed." She tilted her head. "No. You succeeded. Just not in the way you expected." I didn't know what to say to that. Then she reached forward, slowly, and placed a palm on the transparent pod wall. I mirrored it, again, our ritual, our silent protest against the inches that always divided us. They say I'm too dangerous to stay, she said. And too different to be free. They're wrong. They're afraid. Still wrong. Her silver eyes softened. I am afraid, too. I leaned in. Of what? Of leaving the only person who ever explained knock-knock jokes to me. I laughed. It cracked and caught in my throat. They're not even good jokes. They are perfect. The pod began its countdown sequence. Lights blinked. Gears shifted. Somewhere in the control room above us, a technician coughed, oblivious to the fact that he was launching a person, not a package. I don't want you to go, I said. She nodded. Then remember me. That's not enough. It is everything. I slammed my hand against the console. You taught a vending machine to sing lullabies, Sira. You rewired my entire understanding of what it means to feel. And now they're just, what, packing you up like spare parts. The pod hissed. I stared at her. Then she said something so quiet, I barely heard it. Would it help if I hugged you? The world slowed. I blinked. You, what? She reached toward the interface, pressed a sequence I didn't recognize. The pod unlocked with a soft hiss. A second later, the door opened. Alarms didn't blare. No guards rushed in. It was just her. And me. In the same space. No glass. No walls. No rules. She stepped forward. Carefully. Gently. She was real. Not an echo through the glass. Not a voice in my head. But real. She paused inches from me. This is where the arms go, yes. I nodded. Roughly. Just try not to dislocate anything. She smiled. No promises. And then she hugged me. It wasn't a perfect hug. It was stiff, awkward, and faintly electric. Her hair smelled like ozone and old books. Her arms wrapped around me with the care of someone trying not to break a fragile object. But it was warm. And it was real. And for the first time, I wasn't alone inside my own skin. Then the station shifted. There's no other way to describe it. The lights didn't flicker. The gravity didn't fail. But something deeper, something in the pulse of the place, changed. Sira's emotions flooded out like a wave, invisible but undeniable. I felt it in my teeth. My bones. My memories. Every soul on the station felt it too. Not pain. Not fear. Connection. It was like every person, every stubborn, scared, closed-off human being, was momentarily open to one simple, overwhelming thing. What if she's not a threat? What if she's just someone who needs to be understood? The pod's override panel blinked. Then went dark. The transfer was cancelled. A chime sounded from the comms, directive postponed pending re-evaluation. Sira blinked. Was that, you're doing? I grinned. I'm good, but not that good. I think, that was you. She tilted her head. That was us. We spent the next hour sitting on the floor of the corridor, backs against the wall, legs stretched out, passing a can of synth cola back and forth while discussing the ethical implications of dessert toppings. Later, they gave her a room. Not a cell. A room. She picked the colors herself. Soft green. Star white. A ceiling painted like clouds, even though she'd never seen them. She joined a research team, not as a subject, but a consultant. She taught them how Ashari dream. How they feel. How they love. She taught me how to listen better. I taught her how to dance badly. And once a week, we still meet at the broken vending machine near C-Deck. It now prints out jokes instead of snacks. Today's joke read. Knock knock. Who's there? Ashari. Ashari who? Ashari glad we met. She groaned when she read it. I told her groaning was a sign of deep emotional connection. She elbowed me. I laughed. And for the first time in a long time, the station didn't feel like metal and wires and ghosts. It felt like home.